COVID erased years of progress in math and reading scores of students. But even as COVID waned, standardized test scores in North Dakota and nationwide have continued to slip, with students scoring the lowest numbers in decades. However, more and more universities are no longer requiring standardized test scores for admission. Why the continued decrease in scores? But then, does testing even matter? We'll discuss this and more in the Pandemic Slide right now on KX News.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for our town hall, the Pandemic Slide. I'm Taylor Austin. According to the Department of Education, new research found students still haven't regained the academic ground they've lost due to the disruptions of the pandemic. And it goes beyond K through 12 education. Even high school students in our state universities are struggling to keep up. Mentally and physically, there are signs of the academic pandemic slide, but there are dropping test scores too. The ACT test released recent numbers in October. College admissions tests by this year's high school graduates hit their lowest point in more than 30 years. So what can parents and their kids do to simply catch up? Joining me now are two people who can talk about this topic more on the solutions available. Carrie Weigel from Sylvan Learning and Stan Schauer from the Department of Public Instruction. Thank you both for being here today.
Thank you.
So this first question is for both of you, and how would you define the pandemic slide to be in our state?
Go ahead, Stan.
I think a lot of people have seen some of the assessment data that's been posted out on ND Insights, the state report card dashboard, and I've seen the various national reports on NAEP, ACT, and inside of our state, the NDSA scores. We did see a slide in proficiency, in academic achievement proficiency over the past couple years, and some of the lowest points that we've seen in a long time. I think it goes to show the importance of school, and it goes to show the importance of being in the classroom and learning. When you're not in the classroom, it's harder to learn. And when you're not in school, it's obviously really hard to learn. And so the tests just show us that the missed learning time is having an effect. I think it's also becoming more apparent that you lose things a lot quicker than it is to regain them back. And so I personally think, with the data that I have access to and the test scores that I see, that I think we've seen the bottom point of our assessment scores, and I think we are on the rise.
Okay, well, that's good to hear, at least, that we're back on the rise. And so what have you seen academically during the pandemic, Stan? What were the state's goals during the past few years?
The state's goals were to establish initiatives or programs or areas in which we could help from the state level. That's our role, is to help the schools and districts, help the parents and students learn. As simple as that. So in talking with stakeholders, we were trying to find ways to use funding or increase support in certain areas with the funding that existed, and also help them use the funding that was out there to help recover student learning. So there are many programs, one being like the Greater Math in North Dakota program that's going on right now. We had great programs like Science of Reading that were already in place, but were bolstered by this program, and just helping getting that efficient instruction out there.
Okay, and so you said that things are now finally starting to improve. Would you say the same, Carrie, for you? Are you seeing signs of improvement?
At Sylvan, we hear more from an individual perspective versus what the state gets. And I would say, yeah, I think we are starting to see the bottom is kind of, I think we have hit the bottom of coming up. I noticed specifically that students are complaining more or struggling more with math than they have in reading. In years prior, I would have maybe put reading struggles a little bit higher, but we're starting to see kids who've maybe missed units or parts of units, and I think that is attributed to missing that face-to-face with the teacher. And so schools, I think, did the very best they could, and we are just seeing kids that maybe never needed help before, need help on just those specific areas to get through those. So that's kind of what we're seeing right now.
Okay, and Carrie, this question once again is for you at Sylvan. Do you and outside tutors help children outside of school?
Yes, absolutely. We see students about 7 days a week. Monday through Sunday, they can come in our center. We also can meet them online and work on reading, math, ACT, writing, study skills, several different areas, depending on what the student needs.
Okay, and you said that math is the most difficult one for people to teach and learn. And why is math so difficult?
I don't know if math is so difficult, but I do think gaps in math can create, you know how math is built a skill on top of a skill oftentimes? And so if you're missing pieces, like think of playing Jenga. You know, when you start to miss those blocks, it gets harder to add that next level. So as kids have gaps and they've missed things along the way, they can kind of come to a spot that's really difficult. So I just think it's more noticeable. I don't think math is overly hard. I do think when you're missing core pieces, it makes it difficult.
Yeah, I have issues with math myself. But so have there been any positives from distant learning since the pandemic? This one is for both of you.
You want to go ahead?
Well, I would think the positives were that we got to keep it going. I mean, distance learning gave us the opportunity to stay connected with our kids. For kids who were around sickness but weren't allowed to be in the school, we were able to still connect and help with them. So I do think the convenience of it was a benefit, and that we could reach kids anywhere at any time. So I think that was a positive we saw.
Yeah, I agree with what Carrie said. There have been some positives. I also think people need to understand that teaching via distance is very hard. It's something that needs to be worked on and taught, you know, so it's not something that you learn how to do in regular teacher prep. It's a different ballgame. So I think some of our teachers have got to do it for a year or two now and are starting to develop and become better in that area.
Okay, and so right now, looking at North Dakota kids overall, especially the ones that you deal with, what would their report card grade be, and why is that?
Oh, wow. That's a loaded question. I would say, you know, report card grades, I don't know what they would be in general for a bunch of the kids, but I do start to see them improving. Those students that are spending extra time that we're seeing, they are gaining their skills back. They are achieving, and I would say for the most part, when they are getting extra help, we're seeing great results. That's, you know, what we see at Sylvan.
Well, that's good to hear. So is homework an issue, and should learning continue to be outside of school hours then, do you think?
I don't think, this is me personally speaking, I don't think homework is an issue. I have a nephew and a niece who are younger in school. My little one's not old enough to be in school yet, so still daycares who I don't deal with the homework aspect at home. But I think parental involvement and, you know, or anyone at home involved with the student education is extremely important. And so, you know, no one wants homework to take hours and hours and be impossible for the parent and the student to do. But I think if it's a little bit of refreshment or enrichment or trying to catch students up, I think it is a good way to kind of bridge that home and school gap to try to get parents, legal guardians more involved in the process.
Yeah, I agree. So how much does outside forces play a role? Is there gender disparity, race, or socioeconomic issue?
Well, I wouldn't get much data on that, so I can't speak from a data perspective on any of that. Are you guys seeing any trends?
I mean, we saw some, like when our initial testing data came back, and the testing data that I work with is state level assessment data that we have some of that demographic breakdown in. And I mean, one of the things we saw, and it really depends on what level you look at it. You know, looking at something from the state level is not the same as if we look at it at the district level or school level. You know, every district and school has their own story. But I would say at a state level, you know, we saw our students who were, our groups of students who are already lower achieving take some bigger hits. But where our largest and most abnormal hit was where our students who are usually higher achieving, those demographics that usually are above the rest. I mean, they saw double-digit drops. You know what I mean? So it affected all students. And in some of the NAEP data, there was interesting high points. Like there was an age level. I can't remember if it was. I think it was 8th grade. Native American students saw a little bit of a jump, which was sort of an anomaly compared to all the other data because everything else was kind of falling a little bit. So it really depends on what level you look at the data at.
Okay, interesting. Well, thank you so much. Stay tuned, everyone. We'll have more on this KX Town Hall right after the break.
It's bad enough, and they want to make it a lot worse.
retire. Help protect your financial future now and call J.D. Mellberg for your complimentary book from a leading financial firm that shows you ways not to run out of money whether the market goes up or down. This free book reveals little-known truths about annuity strategies in simple-to-understand terms that can protect your money for a lifetime. As a bonus, we'll also throw in a free annuity rate report summarizing the rates and benefits of annuities from hundreds of top-rated insurers, helping you to find ways to get up to 33% more income in retirement. That's right. 2 books, both absolutely free, for calling J.D. Mellberg. Help protect your financial future. Call 800-209-1314. That's 800-209-1314. Call now.
Welcome back to KX News' Town Hall. We talked a little bit about the pandemic slide in general, but now we're going to talk a little bit more about the specifics, for both of you. What has, in terms of standardized testing, have we been seeing?
I'll take up.
Go ahead, Stan.
Okay. So we talked about it a little bit before, right? We didn't test in 1920. There were no state assessments for the first time in a long time. And then so we tested in 2021 and then 21-22. And so while we are still below pre-pandemic levels as far as the state and the academic achievement proficiency levels, we did see a slight increase, especially when we get down into some of the sub-levels from 2021 to 21-22. So like I said, I think we've kind of hit the bottom of where we were with at least what the assessment scores will show us, and that we're starting to come back up. And maybe not recovering as fast as some people would like, but I think we're on that path of recovery. And I think when we have our next set of test scores, it's going to show more of that upward trend story.
Okay, well, that's good. So is standardized testing still important, and if so, why?
I think it is. So it's the only test in the state that we can look at. You know, you can look school to school, district to district, and it is the assessment that is based on our North Dakota content standards. So it is kind of the anchor. I think the assessment gets kind of a bad rap because folks want to use the assessment for things that it wasn't designed for. Its uses get stretched because it is that one assessment that can tell you, you know, school to school comparison, student to student comparison. And so it has its specific uses and purposes. Like it shouldn't be used to drive daily instruction. It's only given once a year, and it's broad, covering all of the standards. It doesn't drill down into like some of the other assessments. So I think it does still have a place. I think just understanding its use and purposes is even more important today than ever.
Okay. And the North Dakota Board of Higher Education recently voted to permanently drop standardized testing requirements beginning with applicants for the fall 2023 semester. This will impact our state colleges, and what does that mean for our students?
I'll go again if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
You know, I think it means that you can go to school and you can apply to get into school without having that high ACT score, without having that ACT score. So currently, right now, though, there are still scholarships that have the ACT score as a requirement. So students are still taking the ACT, and I also believe, from what I know, that the college admissions offices will still take the ACT score. But I think it's a good move because I think you need to look at more than just a test score. It shouldn't just be, oh, they got a 23 on their ACT, they're going to be good at school. Starting to look at more of like the whole student and the whole picture, using more than one piece of evidence. Just like academic assessments, when judging a student's learning or judging where a student's at, you should use all the evidence available. One test is only one piece of evidence. I think it's the same thing with college admissions. It takes a little bit more time to collect more evidence, but I think it tells a better story of the student.
Okay, and besides students, what about educators? What does this mean for them?
I hope personally that there's less stress when taking an ACT. Like, I won't get to school if I don't have this great score. You could have a decent score or no score and have this other body of work that still gets you into college. It would be like if you were applying for a job here and they had a skills test and you didn't pass the skills test, so they said, you know, get out the door without even talking with you. That's kind of what I feel like the ACT is. So I hope that stress and the worry about those standardized tests drops now that requirement's gone. Okay,
that makes sense. And if standardized testing does go away, how will we monitor the students overall, and what's a substitute for it?
And so the ACT being removed as a college requirement, it doesn't touch on like the NDSA, we call it now, our state summative that we give to students. ACT is a college readiness exam, and our state summative assessment is more for measuring the K-12 standards. So That most likely won't be going away anytime soon, as that is in federal and state law, that those students take those tests. But we are really trying to push, like I said earlier, how to use those scores and what they should be used for, and to try to remove any pressure so they're not high stakes. It's really just where the student's at. You know, it doesn't keep the student from advancing, it doesn't keep the student from getting a scholarship. It's really just to look at where the student's at and where maybe some weaknesses are, some strengths are for that
And
student.
how they can improve.
Yep,
then.
exactly.
Okay. And Carrie, at Sylvan, what kind of structure do you teach students when it comes to the standardized test subjects like math, reading, and writing?
Well, we don't necessarily teach to any test. The only one that we do a little bit to is strategize against college entrance tests, as an ACT or an SAT. And at Sylvan, we still believe it's an important thing. It is one part of a student's portfolio to get into college. So we do see students who are after certain academic scholarships, and or colleges will ask for certain scores as placement into certain classes. So they're still using the ACT scores for that, for placement. So we will help strategize and help students achieve the scores that they are looking for and maximize their possibility. As far as in school, I rarely have a parent who calls me with a goal of scoring a certain number on a standardized test. And I think as a parent, most of the time we want our kids to be happy, healthy at school and enjoy it. We want to avoid the tears at homework time. And so I think most parents definitely want to see their kids to be academically successful. Again, not so much on a test, but more of how they're performing in school. And so we look at a student as a whole and help them achieve that way.
Okay, and has there been an intense game of catch-up, would you say? Will students ever be able to close this gap?
I don't know if it's an intense game, but I would say it is a game. I mean, there is definitely the students that are trying to catch up. And yes, I believe, especially with extra support, the students we see are closing those gaps. You know, students at Sylvan, our data shows that they're getting 3 times the growth as if they didn't come to Sylvan. And so we are working with them individually, skill by skill, on the skills they need in particular to close those gaps, to achieve and to excel. And so, yes, we are seeing it every single day at Sylvan. And as far as schools go, I'll let Stan talk to it, but I have 3 kids in school myself, and I am starting to see some great things happening in the school as a mom. So
that's good to hear. And this question is for both of you. What are some solutions that you can think of when working with standardized testing or the main subjects that they test, like math and English?
And so, I mean, Carrie kind of hinted this, you don't really teach towards the test, the NDSA test or the ACT. And now, so if you teach towards the standards and your curriculum is kind of based on the standards, then you are sort of teaching towards the test, but never to raise your test score. It's more for the students' learning and understanding of those skills. And as she mentioned, the story that doesn't get told as much as like the state story and the national story on the standardized assessments, while those are important, it gets more important what's happening in your local school and what a 5th grade teacher is doing with their students. That's outstanding to get those students caught up. Like that's the important, impactful story, and I feel like North Dakota has a bunch of great schools and a bunch of great educators, and there is a hurry up, we need to get these kids caught up kind of atmosphere out there.
Okay, and so when do you think students should start focusing on subjects like math? Studies found that 8th grade is seen as an important time to develop skills for math. Is this true in both of your opinions?
So I'll go a little bit. I'll be brief.
Okay.
It's very important, but we've already talked about how sequential math is, and so I don't think you just start concentrating in 8th grade. If you don't have the basics from 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, you're going to be behind once you get to 8th grade. And as far as our test is concerned, and the NDSA, the test that I run, that's one of our lowest areas is the middle school math area, and it starts earlier on. So you got to make sure we have those building blocks we talked about earlier in the early grades, as it will progress.
Okay.
Absolutely. I was going to agree with him too, is oftentimes when we see issues even in the reading or math sections in middle school and beyond is because of pieces that were missed in elementary school. I think learning fractions and decimals in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade is paramount to being successful in algebra in high school and middle school. So same with reading strategies. Learning to read, we learn to read when we're 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade, and then we read to learn the rest of the time. So we definitely need to be learning those strategies along the way.
All right, well, thank you. Stay with us. We have Write More after the break.
Mopping the dirt from your floor is a messy chore. Well, now you can spin away the
you need to be successful. To jumpstart your next advertising campaign, go to kxnet.com, results driven, and see what our team can do for you.
Oh, the weather outside is frightful, but you can't hibernate all winter. Join Taylor Austin as she covers what to do if caught in a blizzard, how to stay safe while enjoying outdoor activities, and more. Cold weather tips, Friday at 6 on KX News. Hour-by-hour forecasts, live radar, weather alerts. With the KX Storm Team app, you're protected 24/7 with a notification system you customize to automatically adjust to your location. Get the app, get the alerts. Download the KX Storm Team app today.
Welcome back to our town hall. We talked about the pandemic slide and academics and also standardized testing. And now we're going to talk about some of the solutions. For both of you, without going into a time machine, how can we get the last 2 years back?
Wow. I can tell you how we do it at Sylvan, and that might be helpful, is we do use a series of assessments and parents' notes and conference notes and notes from the teacher, and we build a specific plan per student. So no matter where you're at, if you're trying to catch up, keep up, or get ahead, Sylvan's got a plan for a student, because each student's program is individually designed for them. So that's how we do it at Sylvan.
Okay, so Carrie, what do you tell parents that they need to do for their kids every day when it comes to learning?
Ooh, well, I would say our biggest job as parents is make learning fun. You know, when it starts to feel like a job, that's when we avoid it. And so there's learning in everything. You can learn in a game, you can learn by baking, you can learn by reading the menu at your favorite restaurant. You can, when you're shopping, have kids, you know, for $10, what could you buy? So I think for us at home, we should be making learning a lot of fun, and we should be, you know, doing it daily.
Yeah, I mean, learning is fun,
Yeah,
right?
it is.
So Stan, what is the state's main push to get us out of the pandemic slump, and is it working?
The main push is trying to be as supportive as we can of the districts and schools, you know, the folks that do, you know, the actual work with the students. And so I mentioned Greater Math in North Dakota already, but it's a good example because it's a current ongoing grant application that schools can fill out to, they have to fill out a form and then we rank it, but it's innovative ways, creative ways to kind of help catch students up in math. And so we're hoping to get a bunch of applications and be able to provide some funding to the schools to be able to implement those things that are above and beyond normal everyday classroom activities to try to help catch up. And then after that, you know, you hope that some of those work great, and then you can share those kind of examples with other schools and other communities if something is proven to work really well. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Okay, and so we're always talking about parents and the teachers. However, what can students do to help themselves?
Well, I think students should, they should be reading. I think reading, finding things they love to read and engage in those, and then also taking advantage of these opportunities from the teachers are offering and the state is offering. So taking some initiative, I think the students should be looking for those opportunities and knowing that we did miss a little bit of school here and there in the last couple of years. So, you know, to kind of push a little harder, read a little longer, and take advantage of what the school is offering.
Okay. And once again, we're taking a jump back in the time machine here, back to the 1990s. Schools blamed video games for academic declines, and now we're blaming screens and similar distractions. And would you guys say that this is still a valid concern?
I think that's tough. You know, without much, you know, research or data collected on it, you know, obviously screen time can be a concern to anybody, not just children in school or children trying to learn. But I also say, would we have this conversation right now if the pandemic did not occur and we didn't see this learning loss? You know, would the same conversation would be in place? But I think sometimes that's important to take a break away from regular life and school and learning to, you know, have some fun on a screen or a video game or whatever you're doing. But I think students just need to just try to stay as engaged in the learning process as they can, and the parents need to help with that as well.
Okay, yeah. It's nice to get a little bit of a distraction anyway. Now, we've talked a lot about math and reading, especially when it comes to standardized testing, but what are some other areas of subjects that have issues?
Well, we're just see, students are so individual. So I think it depends on the age and the grade and maybe what that student experienced during the pandemic. So I would say writing is another area. When we were doing a lot of digital learning over the computer, depending on the kids' typing skills and what they were doing. So writing is an area that we're kind of seeing creep up a little bit with some of our families. And again, other than that, just study skills in general. How do I study for a test and prepare? How do I keep up with my homework? How do I organize myself? So those are two areas that we definitely have seen.
Okay, and for both of you, are we seeing any growth in any area of our curriculum?
That's a tough one. Yeah, I think, so when you're talking about state level assessment scores, obviously it's only one time a year. So growth could be occurring right now, and we just haven't identified it because we haven't assessed yet. Like, so we saw some small growth between 2020 and 2021, 21, 22. But as far as all the other aspects of school, you know, we don't have that same kind of instrument to measure. I feel like there were some benefits brought in by the pandemic. I feel like there was almost a rally around schools and teachers and the importance of education, and even standardized testing. There was an importance of, like, where are kids at? Where's a test that kind of tells us where we're at? So I think there was some growth in some areas. We just don't have the same hard data to kind of show and prove it.
Okay, is there anything else that either of you would like to add today?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for meeting with us. And this has been our KX News Town Hall. For generations, we've all grown up and gone to school, but over the past 2.5 years, our educators are powering through to make sure those are not lost. And President Teddy Roosevelt once said, "It's hard to fail, but it's worse to never have tried to succeed." One thing about North Dakotans is we never accept failure. That rings truer for our students as well. Thank you again for joining us today. Be sure to watch KX News at 9 on the CW and KX News at 10 on this channel.